Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. And today I'm just getting on a topic of someone has sent me a video that was an interview of Jennifer Lopez where she was kind of talking about her past relationships and things kind of really going to the effect of that, other people in her life was not ready, kind of putting certain blame on them or why things went wrong. And then she went through the whole list of different people, or at least in this video, the way that it was broken down from another content creator who was kind of evaluating the situation, I guess to say. And so between him chopping up with having the spread of all the different people that she dated, along with her putting like her kind of spin on things and just kind of all together. So I don't want to break it apart just to say that she was saying these things, but nonetheless, in the grand scheme of the interview, she ends up saying that of all the people that she was dating, that it was a problem on them, but then she briefly mentions a problem on herself. And I just want to kind of critique this dynamic after watching that, because I thought it was very interesting, and how at the end of the video, the common denominator that the content creator was saying was that she was the common factor. And so I just want to kind of break down this kind of concept and kind of take away from it something where people can learn. So obviously, this is a person who was very popular in the scene in terms of celebrity, in terms of celebrity dating. And you do get a sense that when it comes to that market, when it comes to that realm of celebrity dating, a lot of it is not real. And what I mean by that is in the sense that it's not the norm that the average person is going to go through. The average person is not dealing with things on that scale and scope in terms of the media always following you around, in terms of your business being always out there, which creates a certain dynamic, certain pressure, along with the fact that having that much money creates another dynamic as well, especially when you have that dynamic of a woman who has more money than a man. But essentially, that when you see that kind of breakdown, one of the big things is that a lot of people see celebrity relationships though, and unfortunately and sadly in our world, a lot of people think that is a good example of what the norm is, or a picture or snapshot of how things are out in the world. You hear people always talk all the time, but look at this couple, and they're referring to someone who's a celebrity. And granted, we understand the reason why they do that sometimes is because you probably don't know the same people I know, but if I'm having a conversation with a random person and I make reference to somebody that I know everyone knows, it is an easy way to convey, hey, this is the point I'm trying to get across. But with that being aside, putting that aside, you see here an example of, on a larger spread, of what's going on, even in the microcosm of the normal people. And the reason why I said like more normally, meaning the average, regular, everyday people, 9 to 5 people, because one, media has always been a reference for what people, quote unquote, maybe strive to be, or, try to, it's something that affects our what's the word I'm looking for? Impression. It is impressionable on us. So it affects the way that we, view things, or what's considered wrong or right in terms of a certain dynamic or social dynamic, because we are impressioned by media. And obviously now in the time frame of social media, it's even more so. And I actually did a breakdown video on this pertaining to the younger generation, or not the younger generation, but when you're in that phase of being a teenager, or from a young kid to a teenager, and the things that affect who you are, and how in the past, before social media, a portion of that was media in general, what you got on TV, music videos, all this kind of stuff like that. That era where, MTV, VH1, BET were all like, this kind of cultural thing where you got the quote unquote hip or new trendy stuff came from channels like that at the time. Now social media is a bigger influence in that. But I regress back to say that people like that will still have that level of influence. But the thing about it though is, where normally celebrity lifestyles are not necessarily real in terms of, like I said, the 9 to 5 versions of the world. In this case, it does start to become somewhat real because in the last couple of years, there's been a wide trend for people adopting that way of living. Specifically in this case, her being a woman, women who are in this kind of energy of, feminist movement. I'm strong. I don't need anybody. What was interesting is that at the end of the video, she goes on to say that, she really says that it's at fault with other people. They weren't able to, like have it in them to love or whatever the case is. And that might be true to a degree because, like I said, celebrities on all facets, whether you're a guy or a woman, I do think that you're dealing with extremes, and those extremes are a little not natural for, not a little, they are not natural for humans in general. You know what I mean? From a standpoint of nature, you would never have, say, I'm just going to throw out a random nature example out there. You'd never have a lion, a male lion who is, the king of his domain, and then all of a sudden he enters a phase or era where it's like, instead of him having to fight for everything, it's just like, hey, I have not a pack, my pack of 20 females and maybe some sons inside the mix and this and that, but he's got 1,000 females, and all the food and all the food and all the gazelle he wants come to him. He doesn't even have to do anything. That's like the equivalent of a celebrity. You know what I mean? And so it's not natural in terms of the way we then get adapted to that as people. But it's definitely, like I said, going back to, it's like, it could be an aspect of the men, yes. But then you also have that factor of just looking at oneself and saying to yourself, what have I done wrong in that process? And if you've gone through several different people and every single time is the same situation, you are the common denominator. But it's also beyond that too, because if you also know that you're not living your life with a particular structure, a structure that favors the family, it's a structure that favors yourself, you're not going to be keen on realizing that one of the major reasons why it is going downhill is because you don't have that structure. You aren't contributing to anything other than trying to think that it's finances, which, when it comes to dynamic relationships, family and parenting as well, it's not just all about finances. Now, a lot of times in those dynamics, you have men who are the providers, and that has always been the case. But at the same time, too, everyone knows that to be a father, to be a good spouse is more than just here goes money. There's a lot more role to play. And the same thing goes vice versa as a woman. There's a lot more role to play than just simply now you're switching the roles, say, well, I'm going to be the provider, but I want a guy to be strong. I want to be all these other things. And you are taking that space. So I just thought it was an interesting interview. And I thought that it definitely was incorrect in terms of not focusing on oneself as the problem, even though she briefly said that for a moment. I think that my takeaway on this, bringing it back to our point and purpose on this channel, is really to enlighten and make and help people become a better self, a better version of themselves. I think it's important for people to understand that you don't want to, you really don't want to find yourself in that space. You don't want to lose yourself. You don't want to get tossed into that spiral. And let's keep in mind too, she's somewhere around, I want to say 50, maybe like 55 years old, somewhere between 53 and 55 years old. At that point, you're already gone. Now, one thing that I want to make a little side note on this too, and sorry if this rant is a little long, but the host of the content creator who was reviewing that whole thing had said, well, she's one of that Jennifer Lopez is one of those people who she still is able to get high value guys. My thought process on that was no. And I'm going to explain why. Those guys that she gets, they have money and they have resources. And if you're looking at it just from that standpoint, you could say that they're a high value person. That's cool. I always had the standpoint that a guy who has millions of dollars, if you are chasing trends or you are chasing, say, the video vixens. And when I say trends, it's like, society might say you need to be with a quote unquote financially high powered woman or whatever the case is, because that looks better for you. Even if that person, if you are like, say, a 50-year-old guy, and you could easily have a 30-year-old woman if you're planning on having more kids, that would make more sense. If you go, well, I'm a 50-year-old guy, I'm taking, because a lot of guys that she was dating were probably equal to her age, I'm sure, or maybe a little older, but roughly I would say equal to her age. And granted, some of those things were way back when she was obviously a lot younger. Some of them even going back as far as in her 30s. But at this stage in the game, if a man who is also high profile, makes a lot of money, this and that, and he is going after somebody who is either 50 something years old as well, if he's 50 something years old, that either means he doesn't plan on having any more kids. And one of the big things or motivators for men to continue this process of always trying to get resources, trying to develop themselves, trying to do more, is not generally rooted in just so I can have fun and just that's it. Have a good time. It's spend the money on luxury things, this and that. It's normally the motivation to have more is supposed to be for family and legacy. Generally speaking, I'm not saying that applies to everybody, but this is the point I'm getting at. If a man has the mentality, in any of those celebrities, and they have the mentality that, I want somebody who is, because of the status, I want a woman who has status, even if she is at the age that is not preferable for bearing children, but I want her for the status, or I want her because she's a video vixen chick, and we've seen this a lot too with a lot of celebrities. They pass around the video vixen chick, and I use that as an umbrella for all types of things, whether it's the girl who works in the strip joint, the girl who is always popping up on videos, on sets, on movie sets, and groupie, all that kind of stuff. But you get what I'm saying. Go after the video vixen chick, and they're like, I want to pass her around. Like, you see some of these guys who will date people like, Amber Rose and Kim Kardashians and all this stuff. And what are they famous for? Doing like, sexual things or whatever the case is. They're video vixens. At that point, to me, from a psychological standpoint, that man is not considered necessarily high value. And I know I deviated from the specific of the conversation, but I want to go on the point that host had mentioned that, hey, she's able to still get high value guys. I don't necessarily consider those guys high value if these are the type of guys who target somebody like that. Now, I know it might almost be a contradiction to say, well, if she gets the guy, does that make the guy not as high value? Yes, straight out. And it's not to sound mean over the top, but yes. And the reason why is because they're not thinking from the perspective. A lot of them are thinking from the perspective of insecurities as a man who's like, I can't get certain things, so I want the thing that seems easy, which is why people have the video vixen chick. Or in the case of somebody like JLO, not so much that she's easy, but as much as, okay, that looks like a good pairing. I'm going after someone who's got finances, status, this and that. And a guy who he doesn't need that. So why are you going after somebody who is going to be harder for you to, and I don't want to use the wrong word here, so I'm going to say harder for you to get to see on your eye level, harder for you to have compatibility with because they want to be in charge. That to me makes those guys not the right mindset of somebody who you would say is necessarily high value. But anyway, I a little bit sidetracked there. I want to also say that, as I was mentioning, where the guy was saying that, someone like could still get somebody who's high value. I don't necessarily think that's the case. And my point to all this is trying to say that in relation to that video that I've seen and that interview is that it's really important not to get lost on the idea that, one, you aren't trying to realize the error of the ways sometimes is yourself. Especially based on who you select, but not only just who you select, but who you are as a person, and realizing the things that you call out, because a lot of people in life sometimes will cater to your needs, especially if there's something to gain from you, whether it's financial status, whether it's limelight, whatever it is, but you might get a lot of yes people around you in your lifetime. And this happens to even 9 to 5 people sometimes too. If you're a very attractive person, whether you're a female or you're even a male, you get a lot of yes people around you. They cater to what it is that you want to hear. So you think that there's nothing wrong with you. So you keep going through the same type of situations, making the same mistakes, and not realizing that the problem is you, because you're so used to the people who cater to the way you're feeling, your vibe, and then they go, and then they end up feeling like, okay, well, the problem can't be me. Everybody else is, this person's telling me that everything's good and they're always catering to me, but they don't realize that you're being catered to. And then at that point, you just go, okay, I did my part. Or maybe you didn't really do what you needed to do inside a relationship, but you say to yourself, I did my part, because you have always been catered to. And that really is a big deal, and it really is a big problem. And so it's just really something to be aware of. But I just wanted to kind of piggyback on that, which I seen. Sorry that the video is long. I definitely want to dive more into these kind of things, because you're seeing more people pop up like this, where they get to that later stage of life and they're now really reflecting. And this goes back to a couple of points I've said before on this channel in regards to what I called emotional retirement, which is you having a family and grandkids and kids after that, and just kind of this generation, wherever your point you are at in life, whether you have the grandkids or you just have you just have your kids, you haven't got to the grandkid stage yet, but it's that unfolding of watching your legacy as you evolve it, and knowing that this is what you created. You are part of this timeline of the ones that came before you and the ones that come after you, and that you get to a place where you feel satisfied, because at a certain point in time, whether you're 80 years old or whatever the case is, money's not going to matter to you. And it's going to matter of who's taking care of you and who's below you, as far as you can see the legacy that you created. So between that, which I spoke about on the channel in the past, along with the fact that you're seeing a lot more, like you saw, I did a comment before about the whole, where Vivica Fox had made some comment a couple of months back about, hey, I'll take whatever's on the market, essentially. And you're seeing this kind of unfold. We're in this era now, and it's important for people to learn from it, rather than looking at the mistakes, especially of these celebrities, and not realizing the mistakes that they're making right in front of your eyes. They're getting to a point where they're like, you know what? To see that these celebrities are just really like all over the place. And it's like, you know what? I can't follow these people. You know what I mean? You gotta get to that point. You have to get to that point where it's like, that's not the example to be, because a lot of them now, they're just crashing, like the whole crashing and burning kind of, moniker or whatever. They're just getting to that phase right now of the crash and burn. And a lot of people are seeing it now. And if you are following that same trend, and I know a lot of regular 9 to 5er type of women who are following that same trend, meaning they're regular people in the world, they're not celebrities, but yet 45, 50 years old, they went down that same path. And they look back at it now and they're like, you know what? No, this is crazy. Like, it's not even they're seeing it unfold, and other people around them are saying it's crazy. They're looking at it like just trying to get through the motions, not realizing sometimes that it's over. Like and not to sound like a downer, but like that part of your life is not going to be the same if you didn't build the relationships and the dynamics and the foundation that you were supposed to build. Then it's too late. When you hit 50, it's too late. And what's very interesting about this particular celebrity is there's a few people I know who have come across that stage of hitting the wall, done things incorrectly, that not only viewed Jennifer Lopez as a inspiration, and now you see that she's one of those people who was going through from man to man, thinking she was the boss and this and that, but actually knew of her like when she was young. I know of some people who knew of her when she was young, went to her same high school, and these same people idolized her as she got older, because like, yeah, she's one of us. She made it. She this and that. Meanwhile, you see the way she was living, and those same people were living a very similar life. Some of them last minute were able to rebound back to maybe a past situation that they were dealing with before they got aged age locked out of the situation, but unfortunately a few of them didn't. And it just became like, okay, I'm trying to follow the trend of this person. I don't have that person's money. Not to say that makes it any better, because that person, Jennifer Lopez, is probably going to end up being alone way down the line anyway. But the point is that people who have money are able to kind of stave off some of that a little longer. You know what I mean? They're able to kind of bask in what they're doing a little longer before they hit the bottom, or maybe even have a better chance of getting a second chance to pick up the pieces. Now, whether they choose to do that is all on them. But nonetheless, like I said, I've encountered people who they don't have that opportunity. And so they miss that window. And now they're kind of in a space where it's like, okay, well, why are things operating the way that they're operating? And it's like, yes, you don't understand how things work. Especially when you come from a big city, and a lot of women get used to all this attention, even up to the age of like 40 something, 50 years old, you get a lot of attention. But they have to understand that attention changes after a certain point in time. And the attention that was once attention from real suitors who want to be with you now becomes attention from people who just want to sleep with you. And though you may have had a little bit of that from before, people may have just wanted to hook up with you. They may have wanted to sleep with you. I won't say hook up. They may have wanted to sleep with you, but they also wanted a relationship. That then translates to now, as you get older, they just want to sleep with you without a relationship, which obviously then makes it a hookup. And a lot of people don't understand that difference until it's too late. And a lot of people equate their value to how many people still want to get with them, not realizing that that's not the case. And I definitely would say in the case of Jennifer Lopez, she has now fallen to a place where I don't think anybody would necessarily want something serious with her. But for the fact that she's a celebrity, she is able to hold on a little longer than your average 9-to-5er, where she might still have people who come to approach her, but the truth is none of them really want something long term, or those guys who are even targeting her in the first place probably have something wrong with them, because they themselves are not looking for family, longevity, this and that. They're looking for someone that can join them in the spotlight 9 times out of 10, rather than someone who is legit. They're trying to have a foundation, a life with, in the privacy of their home, and not always on TV and all that other stuff. Sorry that the rant got long, you guys, but as always, you guys be safe, take care, like, share, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.